Ian Cardozo.
The word which came down to all of us who were taking part in that operations: wrap up this operations as soon as possible before the Americans and the Chinese can intervene, before the UN can intervene. And we did so. We went, we used bicycles, we used bamboo rafts, we made sure that the operations carried on without interruption.
So 2 operations or 3 operations, just name them which you think were the turning points.
Well, as
the Battle of Sylhet, in which you took part?
Yes, the Battle of Sylhet was also a turning point. I think Sagat Singh, one of India's foremost field commanders, decided he could not wait, and he felt that the defense of Dhaka would be based on the capture of Sylhet. So he used a heliborne operation, and my battalion, which was half a battalion, was airlifted.
Which was the second operation?
I think Sajid would be able to answer that.
The crossing of the Meghna River was really the key turning point, the destruction of the Ashuganj Bridge, and there is Air Marshal, then Air Commodore Chandan Singh in his helicopter, with Sagat Singh also in the helicopter, well ahead of their troops. They found this opening, and having found this opening, they launched troops of 57 Day and 4 Corps across the Meghna River, heading towards Dhaka, and Dhaka was soon in sight, night 13th, 14th, which is just the right time to move to you, Air Marshal Bishnoi, on the air operations. The Air Force's key role was air dominance, and in fact you achieved air supremacy, and you were able to disable the Dhaka runway and put the Pakistani Air Force out of commission by the 6th of December, which enabled, and you take over.
General Sir, you are very right. It was my privilege and my good fortune that I happened to be at that point of history in the Indian Air Force. I was commanding one of the MiG-21 squadrons during that period. We had moved from Tezpur to Guwahati. Our aim or our duty was to provide counter-air operation, which is destruction of the air power of the Pakistani Air Force. That means Dhaka Airfield and the Sabre Squadron, which was based there.
So they had one squadron of Sabres, F-86 or P-86, and you had 10 squadrons?
Yes, we had 10 squadrons, mixed squadron, MiG-21s, Hunters, Nats, and Sukhois. I was commanding a MiG-21 squadron, and on the 4th morning, I led the first mission over to Dhaka. We had hardly any intelligence about Dhaka airfield.
So, if I may interrupt you, the D-Day was 4th of December for the operations, although operations in the east had started on around 20th of November in what was then called establishing launch pads. But the Pakistani Air Force preempted us and they attacked in the west, and so you went in on the 4th of December.
Yes, on 3rd evening when the Pakistan attacked us, we were still at Guwahati. We moved at night. By 12 o'clock at night on 3rd night.
So what would you say was the crucial operation as far as disabling the Pakistani Air Force?
Now, as I was saying, that on 4th and 5th, we carried out the attacks with the guns and the rockets at the Dhaka airfield. And unfortunately for us, we didn't find many targets at the airfield because they were very well camouflaged and put into the pens, about which we had no intelligence or information at all. So first 2 days, we kept attacking that places. We flew almost about 40 sorties over Dhaka and hardly achieved anything. That afternoon, on 5th afternoon, I told my station commander, sir, we are not reaching anywhere. We must knock off the runway because Sabres are still getting airborne every hour from there and disrupting and damaging our aircraft and the troops on the ground.
So how did you achieve this disabling?
My suggestion was that we should go for steep grind bombing, that high-level dive bombing onto the runway. There was little opposition. There was some opposition from the command and from the station for the reason of safety of the aircraft which were involved.
So by 6th of December, Air Marshal Bishnoi, you were able to disable the runway?
On 6th morning, sir, I flew the first mission on that and took 4 aircraft along with me with 8 bombs on board.
1,000 kg bombs.
1,000 kg bombs, and all 8 bombs hit the runway. And that was the last time the Pakistani Air Force aircraft flew from Dhaka. So within less than 48 hours, we had neutralized the Pakistani Air Force. The pilots of the Pakistani Air Force, who had no other job left now because they couldn't fly from there, were flown away from Dhaka to Burma and from there to UK and then back
and
to
they escaped.
Pakistan.
So this brilliant operation by the Indian Air Force enabled mastery of the skies and enabled the heliborne operations, the paradrop operations, as well as land operations without any interference from the Pakistani Air Force. Ranjit Rai, very quickly now, let's move to the naval operations, and I want you to cover Operation Beaver, the amphibious operation. I want you to cover the naval blockade and very quickly the entry of the USS Enterprise.
Absolutely, just as the Air Force told you, supremacy. But the naval operation was a clinical operation. 65, the Navy was told not to take part. So 71, Admiral Nanda had decided it will be attack operation. Vikrant had a boiler problem. She was sent to the east with Betwa, Brahmaputra, and Khanderi. They carried out a superb blockade. On 4th morning, 6 Seahawks took off, and as the Air Force said, they took on Dhaka. The Indian Navy aircraft led by Gigi Gupta, who got a Mahavir Chakra, took on Chittagong, Khulna, Mogla, and came back with absolute joy on the radar when 6 contacts came back. The signal that followed from the Eastern Command was attack, attack, attack. Supremacy has already been decided, and therefore there was a complete clinical blockade of East Pakistan. Nothing could escape. The 4 patrol boats never came out.
And
now we come up to the amphibious operation which took place on the 12th. General Manik Shaw felt that the Pakistanis were going to run away into Myanmar. Therefore, Beaver, Operation Beaver, and I think it was 4 Gurkha and 3 Omar regiments, they were picked up from Calcutta by Jal Vishwa, brought to sea, transferred to Guldar and Gharial. Unfortunately, the command chose the point of landing. There was a sandbar, and therefore Gharial had to get stuck. Unfortunately, 3 Gurkhas died. They had not got used to amphibious operations. The Navy was ready.
They never, the Gurkhas and water don't get together.
Well, we learn from experience, but after this they have improved. And then a rope was tied from the ship to the shore by a commander of the Navy, Commander Bhalla, the operations officer. 170 people left the ship, and they thought that the Pakistanis were running away, but we were received with glory. And coming to the Enterprise, absolutely, Admiral Zumwalt did not want to send the Enterprise, Decatur, Parsons into Tripoli, with Tripoli, into the Indian Ocean. He asked President Nixon, what is the rules of engagement? There were no rules of engagement because Nixon was not sure, neither was Kissinger. Therefore, he said, I will not send my ships in harm's way. But Admiral Tom Mora, the Chairman Chief of Staff, was told, by night, turn the fleet around and send it on the 12th of December into the Indian Ocean. Jack Anderson came to know it from Charles Radford, who had worked in the embassy, American embassy in Delhi. They had become friendly, and he announced the papers. Admiral Nanda was ready for it and said to his commanding officers, treat the Americans cordially, invite them on board for drinks, and the Enterprise could do nothing.
But is it true that the Russian Navy or the Russian aircraft carrier was also tailing, a Russian fleet was tailing the Americans?
This is not true. They were trailing, but they had sailed from Vladivostok. The Kinda and the carrier had sailed, and the Americans were not sure where they were, but they were heading for the same place, the Bay of Bengal.
So the threat from the south, the threat from the north, our friends in the north and the south were both neutralized. But a great deal of credit must go for the land operations to the Mukti Bahini. They did a sterling job, and for the details of the operations of the Mukti Bahini, nobody better than Sajjad Zahir.